I'm Gabriel, and this is The Rare Mind. Today we're diving into the 10 INFJ traits you simply can't fake. From that quiet intensity in their silence to the way their inner compass never bends. Stay with me until the end, because once we get to the aura that makes INFJs unforgettable, you'll see why imitation always falls short. There are presences that cannot be staged. Some people walk into a room, and without speaking, something changes in the air. It is not charisma in the shallow. Sense charm can be imitated, but a density of being, a quiet gravity that cannot be learned. INFJs carry this kind of signature. It is not crafted, it is lived. You feel it more than you see it, and its force lies precisely in its effortless authenticity. When someone tries to mimic this presence, the cracks show quickly. The performance requires constant fuel, while authenticity requires none. Pretenders rely on surface signals, phrases borrowed, expressions rehearsed, but they fail to embody the depth that sustains the INFJ aura. What others often interpret as mystery is not mystery at all, but the natural result of being uncommonly grounded in one's inner world. I know this weight intimately. It has followed me into every space I enter. To name this difference is not arrogance, but relief. Too often, INFJs move through life feeling misread, their quiet intensity mistaken for aloofness, their calm mistaken for indifference. By recognizing the rare signature of their presence, we give words to an experience many INFJs have carried in silence. I have often felt this tension. I am fully present, yet others project strangeness onto me. The truth is that imitation is unsustainable. The INFJ presence emerges from years of invisible refinement, from inner storms processed in solitude, from integrity lived when no one was watching, from an orientation toward vision rather than applause. This is why outsiders confuse it with mystery. What they cannot decode, they call enigmatic. But it is simply coherence of being. Here lies a practice. Instead of striving to be different, live so rooted in your own essence that difference becomes inevitable. The INFJ signature cannot be taught, but it can be guarded. Guard it not by withdrawing from the world, but by refusing to dilute yourself to match it. Sometimes the most powerful statement is simply to remain yourself in full silence. And yet, a question remains: if the INFJ presence is felt more than seen, how should we measure its impact? Perhaps not by numbers or recognition, but by the way people pause when words fall away and something unexplainable lingers in the room. That pause, that atmosphere, is the rare signature of INFJs. The philosopher Simone Weil once wrote that attention is the rarest form of generosity. In many ways, the INFJ's presence is exactly that, an embodied attention, given without performance, received as mystery, carried as reality. And it is unforgettable precisely because it is real. The words of an INFJ often arrive like drops of ink into water, simple on the surface, yet spreading with hidden layers beneath. What seems like an ordinary phrase carries the imprint of reflection, memory, and vision. It is not that they aim to sound profound. Rather, their speech is shaped by an inner life that never stops weaving meaning. Others sense the weight, though they cannot always name its source. I have felt the tension of this depth in conversations. A sentence leaves my mouth, and suddenly silence follows. The other person looks at me, puzzled, as if I have touched something beyond the obvious. It is not performance. I could not replicate it if I tried. It is the residue of a life lived with inner storms, with questions that pierce deeper than appearances. Silence itself becomes part of the dialogue. When an INFJ does not speak, the absence is eloquent. Pretenders fail here. They may adopt the tone of seriousness, but when tested, their words collapse under scrutiny. True, depth shows itself in how well silence is carried. I know this silence in my bones. It is not emptiness, but a reservoir waiting to speak only when necessary. Depth creates both awe and distance. People lean in, drawn by the sense that something more lies behind the words, yet they may also withdraw, fearing the mirror of truth such depth might hold. This is why INFJs are often misread as intense or even unsettling. They are not seeking to intimidate, but to honor the gravity of reality itself. Sometimes, a single sentence feels heavier than an entire speech. I want to hear from you. Which of these INFJ traits feels the most impossible to fake in your experience? The silent intensity, the quiet confidence, or maybe the hidden storms? Drop it in the comments. Your perspective might be the spark someone else needs to recognize themselves more clearly. Here is a practice. Speak less, but when you do, let it come from the marrow. Ask yourself, does this word carry me, or am I carrying it? Words that carry us ripple outward, long after they are spoken. Words we drag forward just to fill silence fade quickly. The INFJ path is not to master eloquence, but to embody depth until words become vessels of it. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once said that everything is gestation and then bringing forth. This applies to the INFJ voice. Every phrase is the fruit of hidden gestation. And the depth behind those words, whether spoken or withheld, is a truth that no imitation can sustain. There are eyes that watch, and there are eyes that feel. INFJs do not merely observe emotion, they absorb it, as if every subtle shift in tone or posture carried an invisible signal only they could decode. This is their empathic radar, a quiet, relentless tuning to the atmosphere of another's inner world. It does not come from training or from charm, but from the strange intimacy they share with silence. I have often walked into a room and known, before a word was spoken, what tension hovered between people. The sharpness of a glance, the hesitation in a laugh, these things announce themselves loudly to me. At times it feels like both a gift and a burden, a stream of signals that cannot be turned off. Pretenders may mimic empathy with practiced responses, but precision reveals authenticity. Real empathy does not stop at "I understand." It pierces into the unseen, the contradiction between what is said and what is felt, the small fracture in a smile. And this precision is what others find uncanny. How did you know? They ask, though I cannot explain. I simply feel it. Because of this radar, manipulation rarely succeeds. The INFJ detects the fracture before the trap is sprung. They sense when words ring hollow, when kindness is laced with calculation. Pretenders cannot fake this discernment because it is not analytical alone, it is visceral, bodily, immediate. My chest tightens when someone hides pain. My stomach knots when deceit lingers in the air. A practice emerges here. When you sense something unspoken, do not rush to expose it. Instead, hold it gently, as one would hold a fragile object. The gift of empathic radar is not revelation, but stewardship. To see is not to dominate, it is to protect. And yet, the question rises, is it possible to carry this sensitivity without exhaustion? Perhaps the answer lies not in shutting the radar down, but in choosing when to act on it. To feel is inevitable. To intervene is a choice. This hidden radar is what separates the genuine INFJ from imitators. It cannot be staged because it is not external behavior, it is atmosphere felt in the body, like sensing a storm before the sky darkens. And the world cannot fake a storm. There is a stillness at the center of the INFJ that resists the pull of the crowd. It is not rebellion for its own sake, nor a thirst for recognition, but a compass hidden deep within that points to something beyond approval. When they act, it is not merely because others expect it, it is because their inner code demands it. And this quiet fidelity gives their steps a firmness that is rarely shaken. I have felt this compass in moments of pressure, when voices around me urged compromise for convenience. Even when my lips trembled with doubt, my heart knew where it would not bend. This knowledge is not loud, yet it is unyielding. And while the world often confuses flexibility with strength, there is a different kind of strength in quiet refusal. Notice how we're not just talking surface-level personality quirks. We're unpacking the silent storms, the authentic solitude, the visionary edge. If you want to keep exploring these layers without the fluff, subscribe. Every week, I bring a new lens to help you recognize and honor the traits that make you, or someone you know, stand out. Pretenders stumble here. It is easy to imitate empathy or vision for a time, but when principle is tested, when keeping integrity costs comfort, performance collapses. The INFJ does not always announce their values, but they live them in small, consistent choices. The word they refuse to say, the betrayal they refuse to join, the dignity they refuse to sell. This is why others, even without understanding, sense the firmness beneath their calm. Sometimes integrity feels like loneliness. To walk in fidelity to an unseen compass is to invite misunderstanding. Yet that is the paradox. This very solitude becomes the mark of authenticity. People may not agree, but they feel the weight of a presence that cannot be bought. And in a world where everything bends to approval, that stillness unsettles. A practice. Ask yourself not what is expected, but what remains true when no one is watching. The compass does not demand perfection. It demands honesty. If you fail, acknowledge it. If you falter, return. What makes the compass real is not the absence of error, but the refusal to betray what you know deeply. One sentence can stand alone. Strength is often invisible until it refuses to move. Isn't this why so many trust INFJs, even without knowing why? They may not understand the origin of such fidelity, but they sense that beneath the softness lies something immovable. And this compass, once discovered, is what keeps an INFJ free, quietly, stubbornly, unmistakably free. There is an intensity that speaks louder in silence than in 100 dramatic gestures. INFJs carry this current, a force that does not need performance to be felt. It radiates in their stillness, in the way their presence can shift the atmosphere of a room without a word. What others mistake for passivity is often a controlled fire, concealed but never extinguished. I have felt this intensity in myself when my body was still, but my mind and heart burned with unspoken conviction. The silence around me carried weight, and others seemed to sense it even if they could not name it. Sometimes it unsettled those who were shallowly anchored, as though the quiet revealed their own emptiness. Pretenders fail here because they lean on volume. They exaggerate emotion, dramatize reactions, and mistake noise for depth. But true INFJ intensity is subtle. It is the difference between a candle flickering wildly and a steady flame that cannot be blown out. The power lies not in display, but in restraint. This silent intensity often becomes their strongest statement. An INFJ does not need to fight loudly. Their refusal to conform, their quiet endurance, their steady gaze communicates more than arguments could. Others feel both drawn and disarmed by it. Sometimes the most eloquent thing an INFJ says is what they choose not to say. Here is a practice. In moments of tension, before speaking, allow silence to breathe. Let your presence itself become part of the response. Not every fire must be shown. Some are meant to be felt. Silence, when chosen intentionally, is not weakness, it is mastery. And yet, the question emerges, how can stillness carry more weight than speech? Perhaps because what is unsaid cannot be easily dismissed. Words can be debated. Silence lingers in the body. This is why INFJs unsettle pretenders. The latter crave constant expression, while the former can hold an intensity that does not need to be broadcast. It is the paradox of the INFJ. Their quiet often roars louder than noise. And in a noisy world, silence becomes their unmistakable power. INFJs often see further than the moment allows. Their minds trace patterns across time, weaving today's fragments into tomorrow's consequences. This visionary edge does not arise from calculation alone, but from a fusion of intuition and imagination. To stand near an INFJ is to sense they are already living in a horizon the rest have not yet noticed. I have carried this edge like a double-edged blade. At times it is a blessing. Foresight allows me to prepare, to guide, to build foundations others will one day need. At other times it is isolating. When you see what others cannot, you are tempted to doubt yourself. Yet the patterns return, insistent, undeniable. Pretenders are revealed here. They may imitate the language of vision, speak of futures in grand gestures, but when pressed, their focus collapses into short-term appearances. Vision is not a matter of rhetoric, it is endurance. It is the willingness to stand in the gap between now and what is not yet, carrying tension without applause. This foresight gives INFJs an aura that feels otherworldly. People sometimes describe them as dreamers, mystics, or seers, but the truth is more practical. They simply refuse to be confined to the present moment. The unseen is as real to them as what is visible, and because of this, they often bear the weight of what others will not recognize until much later. A practice. When vision shows itself, write it down, guard it as a seed. Do not expect others to affirm it immediately. Clarity often precedes consensus. Trust that what you see is not wasted, even if the world is not yet ready to receive it. One sentence stands alone. I have often lived years ahead of myself, waiting for others to arrive. If you want to catch the next breakdown the moment it drops, especially as we expand on that visionary edge and how it plays out in real life, turn on notifications. That way you don't just stumble on these insights by chance. You'll have them right when they can make the most difference. Is this not why INFJs are both isolated and elevated? The very vision that distances them from the crowd also equips them to lead it, not by force, but by carrying the shape of what is to come. This is their edge, an edge that cannot be fabricated, for it is not strategy but sight. Beneath the calm surface of an INFJ lives a weather system few ever see. Outwardly, they appear composed, serene, even unshakable. But within, storms gather, deep currents of emotion, colliding winds of empathy and vision, a sky darkened by what they cannot ignore. These storms do not announce themselves loudly. They move in silence, invisible yet fierce. I have carried such storms inside me while keeping my face still. People assumed I was untouched, but within, waves rose and broke against the walls of my chest. It was not performance, it was restraint. Sometimes I thought I might break apart from the pressure, yet my calm exterior kept holding. Pretenders cannot sustain this. They display emotion in bursts of drama, mistaking noise for depth. Their storms are theatrical, performed to be seen. The real INFJ storm, however, is private and unspoken. Its intensity is measured not by expression, but by endurance. And this inner struggle is what gives authenticity to their empathy, because they have known turbulence within. They can recognize it in silence around them. Restraint here is not weakness. It is strength forged in pressure. To hold storms without spilling them recklessly is to cultivate a kind of dignity. Yet this does not mean suppression. INFJs often find quiet rituals, writing, walking music that allow the tempest to move without shattering their composure. I know the relief of writing at night, pen scratching while thunder rumbled in my chest. A practice. Do not fear the storm within. Instead, create a sanctuary where it can pass through you, whether through words, solitude, or trusted presence. Storms do not vanish when ignored, they only deepen. But when given space, they become fuel for clarity and compassion. And yet, I ask, what if the hidden storm is the very source of INFJ strength? Perhaps the depth of their calm is not the absence of struggle, but the mastery of it. This is the paradox outsiders miss. The INFJ does not lack intensity, they contain it. The storm, kept private, becomes the quiet power behind their empathy and their unyielding presence. And that is something no pretender can fake. Solitude is not an accessory for INFJs, it is oxygen. They do not seek it to impress, nor to dramatize withdrawal. They seek it because without it, their inner clarity suffocates. Alone, the noise of other lives quiets and their own thoughts sharpen into focus. This solitude is not escape, it is refinement. I have often craved silence not as a luxury but as necessity. In the hush of an empty room, With only the ticking of a clock and the faint hum of night outside the window, I feel my soul breathe again. Others might see this as detachment, but to me, it is return. Pretenders misuse solitude. They wield it as performance, posting their isolation to be seen as deep, while secretly aching for constant validation. Real INFJs vanish without announcement, not to be admired, but to recalibrate. Their solitude does not crave an audience. It craves truth. And within that truth, insight grows. Alone time is not absence but gestation, where intuition reorganizes experience and vision gains clarity. This is why INFJs emerge from solitude not drained, but restored. They return with sharper perception, with words or silences that feel strangely alive. Here lies a practice. Allow yourself to retreat without guilt. Do not explain every withdrawal. Solitude is not rejection of others, it is stewardship of self. Create a rhythm where silence is not rare, but expected, like the night following day. One sentence must stand alone. I have always found more of myself in silence than in applause. So the difference reveals itself. Solitude as performance fades under scrutiny, but solitude as authenticity cannot be faked. The peace of the INFJ in stillness is not a mask, it is the core. And that peace, once inhabited, radiates outward quiet, steady, unmistakable. There is a confidence that does not need applause. INFJs rarely seek recognition because their strength does not depend on external approval. Instead, it emerges from an inner knowing, a trust in their compass that holds steady even when others doubt them. This confidence is not loud, but its quietness makes it uncheckable. I have felt this quiet strength in my own steps, walking into spaces where I did not fully belong, yet sensing within me a calm certainty that I would not lose myself. The assurance was not arrogance. It was simply the refusal to be moved by shallow currents. Pretenders falter here. They chase validation, disguising insecurity as self-assurance. Their confidence collapses when applause stops. True INFJ confidence is tested in silence, in solitude, in choices made when no one is watching. It grows in places where no performance can survive. Others sense this calm strength, often without understanding it. They find themselves trusting INFJs, not because of persuasion, but because of presence. A quiet confidence creates space for others to exhale. It reassures without dominating. It steadies without boasting. Sometimes, just sitting near someone who is at peace with themselves feels like shelter. When we get to the empathic radar, you might think of that one person who always senses the room before anyone else. If this video could give them language for what they've been living, share it with them now. You might be the reason they finally feel seen instead of misunderstood. A practice. When insecurity whispers, do not rush to drown it with noise. Pause, breathe, and return to your inner compass. Ask not, do they approve? But do I remain true? Confidence is not built in front of others, it is built in the unseen fidelity to yourself. One short line must stand alone. I do not need to be loud to be certain. Isn't this why INFJs often inspire trust? Their confidence is not broadcast, yet it radiates. It does not demand recognition, yet it invites respect. And because it is rooted in essence, not performance, it cannot be faked. Some qualities cannot be dissected into traits or habits. They exist as atmosphere, as presence, as something that lingers after a person has left the room. INFJs carry such an aura, one that feels less like personality and more like essence. It is not their words alone, nor their choices in isolation, but the rare convergence of depth, vision, and integrity into a singular current of being. I have felt this aura working in silence when someone later told me, "There was just something about you." It is not pride. If anything, it humbles me, because I know I did nothing to manufacture it. It is not performance but residue, the natural byproduct of living authentically aligned with one's inner compass. Pretenders stumble here because aura cannot be imitated. They borrow. behaviors, phrases, even mannerisms, but what radiates from an INFJ is not behavior, it is coherence. It is the union of storms and silence, empathy and foresight, solitude and conviction. The aura does not shout, but it does not hide either. It simply exists, and it cannot be replicated. This is why others often describe INFJs as unforgettable, not because of what they said or did in one moment, but because their presence carried a texture that imprinted itself onto memory. To be near them is to feel the quiet pull of depth, the suggestion of vision, the shelter of integrity. And even if people cannot define it, they carry its impression with them. A practice. Stop worrying about aura itself. Live truthfully, refine your solitude, honor your compass, speak with depth, and allow empathy its rightful place. Aura emerges not when pursued, but when essence is lived without dilution. One line must stand alone. I have learned that what lingers after me is often stronger than what I said in the moment. So the hidden reality is revealed. The INFJ cannot be convincingly fake because what defines them is not surface, but source. Their aura is the convergence of everything unseen, the storms endured, the silences honored, the visions carried, the compass obeyed. And this essence, once embodied, makes them unforgettable in ways no performance could ever achieve.